All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mach 30's November Reports Hangout. For those who haven't joined us before, this is the monthly opportunity that everybody gets to hear what the latest and greatest Mach 30 activity has been over the past month. It's the first Thursday of the month, our monthly hangouts, and we couldn't do what we do without support from you guys, our volunteers and donors. If you want to find out more, you can go to mach30.org. And if you'd like to help fund some of our activities, that's with the Catalyst Club. You can go to the link in the upper right-hand corner, the 2014 Catalyst Club link, and please donate generously. With that, we'll dive right into this month's activities. We have a special topic, and it's from the Board of Directors. Jay, if you could give us a quick update on what's happening at the board.
Absolutely. So at the October board meeting, Rebecca McGrady, who's one of our original founding board members, gave official notice to the board that this will have to be her last year serving on the board. She's been with us since before the beginning, so we're very sorry to see her go, but we understand. Her life circumstances have changed where there's no longer time for her to participate on the board, but she will hopefully be staying on as a volunteer, including her role on the Revenue Generation Committee, which we're very excited about. We're going to miss her, and we really appreciate all the years of service that she's put into Mach 30. If you've seen any logo, if you've seen any visual aid, if you've seen presentations, Becca had hands in all of that. And she was a constant reminder of the non-engineer voice in the community.
Really definitely acted as a great a balance to all of us technical folks, and reined us in when we started too much engineer speak.
Yeah. So we couldn't get to where we've gotten without her. We're deeply appreciative of the time she's helped us, and wish her nothing but the best, and we look forward to continuing having her at a volunteer capacity, if not on the board.
Yep, definitely. And actually, before we move on to the other buses, I forgot to do the introductions. So let's jump back out and do that. My name is Greg, Mach 30 Vice President. You just heard from Jay. Jay, give us a howdy.
Hey there.
And we also have Aaron Harper joining us tonight, one of the Mach 30 longtime volunteers and our technical engineering support. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, back to our status update, and this is a more technical speak, I guess you call it, in the open source spaceflight hardware bus. We're still dividing up our work by buses or by major project areas. This one's where we talk about the hardware projects that we're doing related to open source spaceflight. And most of our work in this area is along the lines of the export control free roadmap. All of the hardware technology projects that we have coming up, we want to make sure that we can do those projects and steer clear of the export control regulations. So Jay, can you bring us up to speed on the work from over the past month?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, like Greg said, this is a roadmap that is designed to be free and clear of export control concerns. So that the work going on to manage export control policies and procedures can move along at a sustainable pace and not be worried that someone's going to go off and release something accidentally that they shouldn't. We started work a little over a month ago in earnest to develop this roadmap after the board tasked the engineering community at Mach 30 to propose a roadmap that would provide the export control team running room. And I'm very excited to report that work is picking up speed. We are starting to get our hands wrapped around doing things a little more asynchronously than normal, which is a kind of side project that I'm experimenting with while we're doing this. But honestly, the heavy lifting is still happening in our Engineer Speak Hangouts, Thursdays at 10 o'clock. If you're interested in joining us, just let us know over Google Plus or by email, and we'll get you an invite. We started off with a very broad list of spaceflight technologies, basically looking at what were the primary systems in a launch vehicle, because the board has identified that the major target long term is supporting launch vehicle technology. The first 300 or so miles are among the hardest, as they say, and so we are really focused on developing technology to support that, so that there's as much open technology related to launch as possible. We've then pared down the entire list of systems in a launch vehicle to 3 primary technology areas that we have a combination of expertise and that we can stay below the threshold of requiring export control procedures for, mostly by focusing on technologies up to and including performance at the level of high-powered rocketry. Anything at or below that level is exempt with certain other caveats and provisos, but we've got all those documented, and now we're focusing on aerodynamics, structures / mechanisms, and propulsion.
It turns out that a lot of that work is also available online, and there's many amateur communities that have paved this path, and we're trying to do it at Mach 30 to gain that experience and leverage some of that existing body of work, body of knowledge.
Yep, and to move from I shared a piece here and I shared a piece there to stuff that really is open end to end. I think one of the things that has been my experience is that the amateur rocketry community, the hobby rocketry community, is very maker-like. They tend to show the part that was gee whiz to them, and leave out a lot of steps because that's not what they're really interested in. They're interested in the gee whiz part. And for us, it's essential and important to fully document systems so that anyone can then leverage that technology in those designs. So it's while we will be replowing some well-trod ground, we hope to be adding to the overall capability of the community through our open source approach. Once we had those 3 categories, we've been brainstorming potential projects, themes, or just things that go along with them in kind of virtual cards. We're working remotely with a process the board uses quite frequently in person called card storming, and literally in person we would write the ideas down on large note cards. But in this case, we're doing it all with notes in wikis. The next step is to focus on scoping those ideas and sorting them in meaningful groupings. Matt Mayer, one of our lead volunteers over at the Export Control Task Force, is currently scrubbing the list of virtual cards to make sure we aren't inadvertently expanding out of the scope and back into export control land. He's got 2 of the technology areas down and 1 to go. And then the next thing we'll do is start continuing with the exercise called card storming, where we will, as a collective, we will sort out what the relationships on the cards between the cards is, and then go forward from there.
So relationships both in terms of like types of projects, and Jay, you and I have discussed this in terms of the time aspect of precursor tasks, if there's any tasks that have to be completed before other tasks.
Yeah.
And,
by the time the roadmap's done, we have to do all of that. I expect what it'll mean is we're going to do several passes of different flavors of sorting, even more so than we usually do. When we do this for more generic planning purposes, 1 or 2 levels of sorting is usually enough. My guess is we'll need several iterations of sorting to find the meanings of the groupings of cards, and then to put them into order, and to put them into priority, and to put them in relationship to one another and in parallel tracks. I keep remembering James Carlson kept asking when he was hanging out with us more frequently, where is the equivalent to the civilization technology tree? And so in the back of my head, right, that's not traditionally what we would develop as a roadmap necessarily, but in the back of my head I can't help but wonder if that's maybe what we need to get out of this exercise, so that each task can still unpack what its full meaning is, but that you see it in context to the bigger picture. Yeah, and I don't know, I keep struggling with exactly what the final product will look like, but in the back of my head I keep hearing James ask, well, where's the civilization tech map? Tech tree, right?
Civilization, the board game or computer game?
Yeah, both. There are both now.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my next question. What would it actually look like? What about using, for example, a Gantt chart with to cover the prerequisites.
Maybe. I want to stay a little. The requirement flows are going to be essential, but I don't want to assume the time it's going to take for us to do things, and I don't want to assume that we're the only ones working on it. One of the things that people have asked me in regular engineer speak hangouts where we're not on air is one of the so whats is what happens if someone else does one of the things. And as long as all the prerequisites are done, and it is done to our definition of done, that is, the documentation is sufficient to meet the definition of open source hardware and to meet what we consider to be a prime directive, which is it's replicatable, then I think that's a win, and we get to mark it on the box as done. And so I don't know that, like, I want to avoid the more waterfallish approach where the time is marked off and the moment something goes a week late, the whole roadmap falls apart. It's a
Critical path.
it's not a single project. It's like when you're planning out your vacation. I want to get to all these places, and some of them I need to go in a certain order because, well, it doesn't make sense on my vacation if I'm doing a road trip to visit California and then Washington, D.C. and then Kansas, right, under most circumstances. I mean, you could imagine a particular way, I suppose, if you're starting off close enough west. But if you're me starting off in the Midwest, going all the way over to L.A. before going to D.C. and then coming back and crossing my path again to Kansas is silly. So we want enough structure that we can make intelligent decisions down the road. I think this is all my personal stuff, and we're doing this for the first time. We're gonna make mistakes. We've already made some, and we've talked about them because we share our mistakes. It's another one of the core values of doing this stuff openly. And I am quite honest that I'm not 100% sure what it'll look like, but I know that it won't look like some of the things that have come before. And I know that it needs to be pluggable. Like, other people need to be able to come in and play in the sandbox with us and be able to figure out where the best place for them to plug in is, even if it's only once.
Is there anything even close that anybody else has ever done?
That's a good question. The other thing this reminds me of is the, what was that called? They just did a Kickstarter-y thing about it too, about a rebuild of it. The Northrop Grumman one or whatever it was.
Yeah, next 50 or next 100 years in space kind of thing.
Yeah, and that one is that one's too crazy. There's too many lines, too many different ways. You can't really follow it. And it's
Are you talking about the Rockwell Collins space map?
Yes, Rockwell Collins. Thank you.
That's
so sorry, Rockwell and Northrop. I should know better to mix you guys up. I apologize. Though probably none of you will see this video. To be honest. But if you do, I'm sorry. But yes, the Rockwell one, yeah, absolutely, is kind of the same. And quite honestly, there's some similarities to stuff that I've seen over at Open Source Ecology. So I think other people have done some similar things, and I've seen most of them. I still think ours is going to probably look a little different because we're a little bit different group than some of these folks.
And honestly, it's just an interesting part of Mach 30 about doing it organically and being able to withhold judgment until the end, and the product will shape itself throughout going through the process.
Yes.
And I tend to have a higher tolerance for ambiguity, and I understand that a lot of people don't. So thank you for continuing to ask questions, Aaron. That's important for the rest of us.
So yeah,
anything else on
the really short version is we're making lots of good progress. I'm very excited about what's coming up. There's all sorts of good surprises in there, lots of good ideas. I'm looking forward to what does develop organically. I think it's going to be a great reflection of our community and of our vision.
With the ultimate goal, of course, to drive or define the next few projects that Mach 30 is working on in an open source hardware manner. Yeah. So definitely looking forward to that from the hardware building perspective. Okay. That wraps up the spaceflight hardware piece. We can shift a little bit to the broader open source hardware community. In that area, Mach 30 is working on 3 specific projects. Um, let's just list them here real quick. The Open Design Engine is our open source hardware portal. We have the Export Controls Task Force, which is working on export controls for the broader community, and CodeCAD, which is open source CAD tool we're working on. We have 2 updates there. Jay, can you tell us a little bit about how the Export Controls Task Force is going?
Absolutely. So there's 2 big things ECTF is working on right now. The first is the direct support with Matt's participation over in the roadmap meetings and work between sessions to directly support the roadmap team to help us stay clear of export controls by doing reviews at every stage of the work. And then the other piece is the long-awaited escalation letter in response to Department of State's initial reply back to us over the summer saying, we're not going to help with ITAR-EZ. I'm like, really? So we have finally, around PhD time, around other volunteers time, gotten a draft that the entire task force is very happy with. And now we have the next little hurdle, which is finding the appropriate email addresses for people to send it to, because directors of various elements of the Department of State don't just list their email address randomly on the internet, it turns out. But we've gotten good support from Justin, our lead expert on that task force, and so I'm hopeful to see sometime next week, maybe we'll actually get that email out, and hopefully by next month we'll have something to report on that as well.
Whether it's a response or a follow-up meeting, or hopefully something.
Yeah, something other than crickets, please.
Yep. Okay, that's the Export Controls Task Force. The next thing is about CodeCAD, and Jeremy noticeably can't be here tonight. However, he did actually do a report for us on his project, his progress with CAD Query, and sent in actually a video update. I think Jay's going to have that queued up and give us a chance to hear from him, even though he's not here.
Yep, and big thanks to Jeremy for taking the time to prep the video. So without any further ado, here is Jeremy.
Hello everyone, this is Jeremy Wright, Mach 30 board member. This video is meant to be part of a Mach 30 Reports Hangout. If you don't know what that is, I'll put a link in the description below, and also a link to Mach 30's YouTube channel. And if you don't know what Mach 30 is, I'll also put a link to mach30.org. If you're interested in space at all, I suggest you go over and check that website out. What I've been working on the most lately is something called CAD Query, and CAD Query is a CAD library, and it's we call it CodeCAD. It's also known as programmatic CAD. It's kind of like OpenSCAD. If any of you watching this have ever used that, what it allows you to do is write scripts or programs in Python, and then generate 3D models. And this is very much different than the typical point-and-click GUI CAD interfaces that most people are used to using. We feel that this could open up a whole new level of parametric modeling for Mach 30. And what I mean by that is that, for instance, you might have an antenna assembly for like a ground station or something like that, and you can link everything together and tie everything to the fundamental math behind the antenna, to where you could just change the frequency and the antenna will automatically scale and adjust itself accordingly, so it'll work properly for that frequency. And we also feel that it opens up some interesting avenues for analysis. It's kind of there's a lot of discussion going on about that right now, about where that's going to head and what that could mean. But when I'm talking about analysis, I mean like analyzing the flow through a rocket nozzle. So you would generate a model and you would simulate the flow through it, and you would analyze, hotspots and things like that in the nozzle. So my involvement in CAD Query started at version 0.1.5 actually only been involved for probably a couple months now. We released version 0.1.7 a couple weeks ago, I think, and it included a revolve operation, which was very needed, and I feel was a very good addition that we got into that version. We're headed towards version 0.1.8, which will hopefully include advanced extrude and sweep operations, which is another thing that we feel is kind of needed. CAD Query now has a GUI of sorts. It's not ready for public consumption yet, but it's getting fairly close, hopefully within the next week or two. I'll have something out, and people are more than welcome to try it. If you're interested, get a message to me in the comments below or something, and I can get you a copy to experiment with. It's not for the faint of heart, though. At this point, you have to copy it over, do a couple things to get it running, but it is implemented as a FreeCAD module. So it runs inside of FreeCAD, and it provides a FreeCAD workbench. If any of you have ever used FreeCAD before, it has this idea of workbenches where you've got a menu and you pull down and choose what workbench you want. It shows you the tools that are only related to that task, whatever you're doing, whether it's building just general 3D models or shipbuilding or analysis or animation, robotics, things like that. And the goal would be to eventually get this merged into FreeCAD proper, so that when anybody downloads FreeCAD, they automatically have the CAD Query workbench right there, so that they can just open that workbench up and they're ready to go with starting to experiment with CAD Query. So the workbench is designed so that you have, it's kind of like the OpenSCAD GUI interface, where you have code pane on the left, and you type your code in that, and then you hit F2 for execute, which is the key that's currently mapped to execute the script, and then your 3D model shows up in the right pane. And it also has a Python console at the bottom, which is just FreeCAD standard Python console. So if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to contact me through the description or comments on this video, through Google+, Twitter. Contact me directly through Mach 30. We're pretty excited about the possibilities with this, and be real interested in talking to you about it. So thanks, and talk to you later.
So that was a cool update. The first time we've ever had somebody phone in a video or send in a video to include in our Reports Hangout. I was also thinking of smiling to myself about how Becca would be giving us a real hard time for going down into the weeds technically, but that was a good update from Jeremy.
I think Jeremy is rightfully so very excited, very proud of the work he's been doing. I have to say, this is one of those things that I'm very happy to see from a combination of standpoints. One is I've been trying to preach to the larger open hardware community for a long time, saying mechanical CAD is one of those things that's going to stop us very, very soon, like as a movement. If we don't get good mechanical CAD tools, eventually we're going to move past electronics for the bulk of things, and you've got to be able to do the mechanical drawings to go with stuff. You can't just rely on, I've downloaded the STL file and 3D printed it. As it gets more complicated, that's just not going to work. So I'm excited to see progress in that vein. I'm very excited to see CodeCAD in particular, because it all came out of conversations at Apogee. Like, it was all bubbling up before Apogee, but then when people came together at Apogee this summer, it all really clicked for the first time, and all of a sudden off to the races with this. And so I'd also like to see the reward of doing Apogee. More indication that this new way of planning and meeting as a larger group is paying off. So.
Yep.
I have to admit, I'm very, very surprised that the open source community, being that that open source hardware has been, somebody has an itch to scratch, they scratch it and release. I'm honestly surprised. I still am surprised that nobody had a mechanical CAD itch, or that they somehow did not scratch it up until now.
I think it's a combination of things related to stuff like the nature of the project, so the folks that are doing and who's doing them. So like most of the mechanical projects that are big scale are like open source ecology, and they're really, their devices are of a different nature a lot of times. I mean, they're really thinking about what can you put together in a field,
right,
where you don't have plans, right? You've got a booklet and you're making do and things like that is my read on them. I've met them a few times. And I think that a lot of the other folks, and I think plenty of folks are still happy to use proprietary tools. Folks have access at their makerspace or through their school to SolidWorks or to AutoCAD, or are using the web versions of AutoCAD. They're using SketchUp. I just don't think that many of the projects have passed to the point where it's a thing, and those that have, I think, are willing to put up with proprietary tools still.
Agreed.
So it's, disappointing in some ways, but we tend to be the tip of the spear for stuff like this, so it's also not wholly surprising to me.
Agreed.
I've always thought that it's, of course, inevitable, and at a certain point we will, of course, need these tools, and as the open source hardware community matures, more people come in, there's a broader scope of projects beyond just small electronics circuits and projects. This is an obvious next step. Hopefully we're encouraging folks and being a catalyst for others to help take that step as well with us. All right, any other hardware questions? Open source questions? All right, we got 2 things to report in the education and outreach bus. Both of them revolve around our interaction at ISPCS and inability to attend. We actually had a good hangout last month with David Valentine, the anthropologist, who attends these conferences pretty regularly and who I met personally at the conference. We've attended the last couple of years together, and since neither Jay or I could go this year, we kind of lived vicariously through him. We had a link in minutes from today where you can go and watch that full hangout. We won't play that here because that's another 90 minutes of just yakking about cool space stuff. There was one other thing that came out of that. Jay, if you want to fill in anything I missed, and then talk about the additional contact that we made.
Absolutely. I think you summed up that great. Just want to add that, again, we're very grateful to David for taking time out of his attendance of the conference to join us on air and to bring us a little closer and ensure the Mach 30 community still got to get a taste of ISPCS. And then one of the things that also came out of this, out of talking to David about ISPCS, was that he met some folks that are do support for STEM education in New Mexico, and he, as soon as he heard the stuff that they were talking about and why they were at ISPCS and how that plugged into their educational programs, immediately thought about our education and outreach activities, and so he's passed along contact information, and Greg and I are in the process of reaching out and introducing ourselves in Mach 30 to see if any of our existing projects or stuff maybe going up on the roadmap is stuff that could lead to some cooperative work.
Yep. So it's good to see. Again, thanks to David Valentine, that Mach 30 is relevant enough, and we're able to contribute to the broader communities, whether it's open source hardware, spaceflight, or in this case, STEM education. So we like to see that and make those happen as much as we can. there was one more outreach thing on the list, but I'm not going to spend much time on the details, other than folks are finding Mach 30. We got some contacts on our social media sites. Folks are finding and contacting us and just wanting to connect, and that's good. On LinkedIn, we're trying to make some connections based on folks that found us on their own. So that's good progress, and
Always love when that happens.
Yep. Hopefully we'll have more to report on specifics, but nothing yet. All right. Moving on, the last bus. No. Yeah, the last bus with any kind of updates. Business operations. This is maybe boring stuff for some, but I'm really interested. So we're doing a lot of different things in the business operations side to keep the organization up and running. Things like revenue generation committee, finding insurance, Mach 30 drawing board, and open airing wikis. And then, of course, our strategic planning. The Perigee event is coming up. This will be the second annual. With respect to revenue generation, I'm still trying to reboot the committee, and we're all busy. We all have additional schedules and day jobs, so I haven't gotten a critical mass together in any one time and place. That's still on my plate to do that. No update there.
That's still
yeah. Kind of a prerequisite. I feel responsible for getting us some money so we can do some of this other cool projects we keep purporting.
And I'm about to ask you to generate more money.
Yeah. Which is a good transition to the insurance piece. Jay, tell us how much more money.
Yeah. So
what about insurance?
All right. For those that have not been following, or for those that have and just don't remember where we left off, because it is like a melodrama. During 2014, Mach 30, at the end of 2013 and all through 14, Mach 30's made a concerted effort to address what are the insurance needs for the organization. Greg and I had long ago with Dave Dio done an insurance hunt for a makerspace, and we learned then that when you're not cookie cutter, insurance can be challenging. And then when we started doing insurance hunting for Mach 30, we learned when you're not cookie cutter and you have the word rocket in any of your project names, insurance goes from challenging to OMG, they run away from you. And so there was quite a bit of the time that we spent just trying to find someone that was not going to run away from the first get-go. Fortunately, we found a really great agent and agency to work with, and we have been in a very long thread working with them. The problem is that the agency still has to find actual insurance issuing companies that are willing to work with companies with the word rocket in their projects, and that turned out to be another layer of difficulty. And this last month, I met with them again. I met with our contacts again, and dived deeper into the situation. I worked with both an internal-facing person and an external-facing person, because once you become a problem child, the internal-facing people come out to see you as well. So actually, it was an extremely rewarding lunch. We've had a couple of email exchanges since, and basically, we're backing up, and we've got a couple of takeaways from lunch. The first is, like export controls, insurance is just going to be harder than we wanted it to be. We just can't escape that. Even a small organization that was like a for-profit small hobby rocket company would wind up having to do the kind of things that we're seeing. A significant fraction of a startup cost for a business that wanted to do stuff similar to what we're doing, they would, in their business plan, have to just carve out a substantial part of their initial operating funds annually towards insurance relative to their income. Like, it would be a very large percentage. And if you look at a company the size of Estes, it turns out that they're a large multi-million-dollar company. They're not in the billions, but they're in the tens of plus millions of dollar scale company if you look at the last time they changed hands. So it wouldn't actually be surprising, based on what we talked about at lunch, to see them have to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on insurance, or even possibly self-insure part of things. And this is for an organization that is a little bit more recognizable in the shape, right? They're not doing open source things; they're just selling the motor. Just making and selling motors and kit and rocket kits. With 50 or 60 or 70 years of history behind them, both in terms of corporate existence and in terms of working with their insurance companies, right? Insurance turns out is a little bit like credit. The longer you're with an organization, the more they understand what your behavior is and how much of a risk you really are, right? And your rates are all about what kind of risk are you. We look like nothing else anyone's ever seen. That right there ups the risk, right, as far as the companies are concerned. So that first takeaway is this costs money, and it's just going to cost money. There is no escaping this. The second is that since we look so different and the immediate reaction is, OMG, run away, we need to build some history, a lot like getting your credit history, right? We need to get some insurance history. We need to show what is the real nature of our risk through having policies and behaving appropriately on them and working cleanly with our providers. And so the new game plan is a recommendation that we start with more normal stuff. We go ahead and we get D&O, Directors and Officers Insurance. We are approaching that threshold where it's important to have it anyway. It doesn't hurt us to have it. It costs money. But from a structural standpoint, it's a generally good thing, and it's going to become a very good thing soon anyway. And it's an obvious, we will not have the trouble with the D&O that we've had with the product insurance. So it will be finally that easy win in the insurance stuff, and it will start to build history. And then we can move on to the more complicated stuff. And I've got a series of applications the board needs to task out to some committee members or just slice off. Although with the board getting down to 3, it's probably just going to be the board for a little while. But we need to start working on those applications and turn them in as we get them ready, and just start working through it. And it's going to be like export controls is the bottom line. No one wants it, but we got to have it.
I always thought that it was more about becoming mature, right? This is a gravitas thing, and at a certain point, an organization gets to need a few things, and insurance is one. So inevitable, but a hurdle nonetheless.
Yeah, I would have preferred not quite so much money, not quite so soon, relative to our income generation capability, because we are talking in the several $1,000s annually minimum cost.
Yep. Well, I'll add that to my to-do list.
Like I said.
Yeah. Other business operations besides insurance and income, our Mach 30 drawing board and openeering are on a wiki site. We did get a notice that we had to upgrade or something like that, right?
Yeah, so we were using a site called Wikispaces to host 2 wikis for running things at Mach 30. One was the drawing board, which was kind of a parking lot for interesting ideas of any flavor that might eventually be useful to Mach 30. And the other one was Openeering, which is basically it's a database of free, low-cost, or open source tools for supporting engineering development work. Identifying the fact that we were not happy with existing open source CAD tools and eventually going to CAD Query and CodeCAD as a project comes directly out of the work that was being done at Openeering. Wikispaces offered a free level of service, but they have changed management over the last year, and they have dropped free hosting for all but academic institutions, so actual K through 12 and universities. And the per month fee was simply greater than what the value was we were getting out of the wikis. We really liked them. They had a purpose, but when we're already wrestling over things like insurance, we decided to export the content, and so those sites are down for a little while. We're going to find them a new home. At the moment, Chris has been trying to import them into an alternate wiki system like MediaWiki or one of the other ones, but he's not had as much luck as he had hoped. So we're probably going to find those a temporary home as static content instead of dynamic wiki content, just so the existing content is still visible. And hopefully at some point we'll figure out what we are going to do long term for hosting those solutions.
Okay, so more to come on that. Look for the static sites to come back up eventually, and maybe long-term dynamic sites. Maybe we can find some help. If you guys know of any good wiki hosting solutions, let us know in the comments or send us a note.
And how to import wiki spaces content into said solution. I think that's been the real challenge.
Okay. The last thing on the business operations list is Perigee 2. And for those that are, again, not familiar with our strategic planning schedule, we do two events per year, an apogee and a perigee. The names come from orbital mechanics, where apogee is the furthest point in the orbit, furthest away. So you take a big picture look and very slow and methodical. The perigee event is based on perigee, the lowest part of the orbit. It's down in the weeds, very fast and quick and dirty, basically just to review status and go through scheduling and funding. Typically, the perigee event is in the winter time frame. We hosted the last one to coincide with Martin Luther King Day. Since it's a government holiday, most of us have off, and that seems to work. Did I miss anything?
And this year we're tentatively looking to host again on Martin Luther King Day, which will be the 19th of January. The board is all confirmed that that's an available date. We're going to stretch out to advisors and other potential participants and observers and make sure that it works all the way around and then lock it in. And the other big piece is this will be the first year where we've had perigee following apogee. So we'll be planning. Last year we only planned out half a year based on existing strategic planning documentation and waited for apogee to give us the longer view. But we'll be taking advantage of the deep long view that we got at apogee 1 last summer. So this perigee will lay out activities for all of 2015. And then we'll get really into the rhythm that we intended all along with perigee planning out the actionable items for the year and apogee forecasting out longer range and giving an opportunity to make fine-tuning adjustments in the big and small pictures.
Yep, so that's how we manage the organization, and I look forward to meeting with the board and planning us out through the rest of 15 and a longer view, giving us some details to work from.
Kepler would be proud.
With that, I think that wraps up the Reports Hangout.
Greg, I'd like to just do one quick acknowledgement the official close. And I think it's important for us to take a moment to acknowledge that this is just a week after both the Antares aborted launch and the Virgin Galactic / the spaceship company / I guess sort of still scaled, but I think it's really the spaceship company at this point. Their accident on Halloween of 2014. I encourage everyone to keep both of those organizations in your thoughts and prayers as you best see fit. I know we're at Mach 30 going to be paying close attention to how the accident investigations go. I encourage everyone to withhold judgment until the NTSB and the equivalent investigation over at Orbital are completed. And I want to remind everyone that there is a fundraiser for the surviving family members of the crew member that died in the Virgin Galactic accident to help them with expenses. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. There's a link from our chat board, P2, mach30p2.wordpress.com. There's a link from there over to the campaign, and we wish nothing but the best for both Virgin and Orbital as they sort things out. And we know that they'll both fly again, and we're going to stand there next to everyone else, cheering them on when they return to flight.
Definitely well said. Thank you for that reminder. And until next time, we'll sign off for this evening. This has been November Reports Hangout. If you enjoyed the update, please click the like button. And if you want to hear more from Mach 30, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates and videos. And we'll hope to see you in a future Hangout. Ad Astra Persivitatem. Through the stars, through community.